Hello, so today we are going to be taking a look at the Nemeth Designs Partenavia P68B Victor in Microsoft Flight Simulator. If we go and have a look, we've got it on the ground here at Boonville in the US. I've got the weather changed to few clouds because it's actually blowing a gale at Boonville today, which wouldn't make flying any fun. So you can see the model of the aircraft is done, or the modelling of the aircraft is done really well, and the textures are really nice. They're all high quality. Unfortunately, that's not the whole story with this aeroplane, and as much as I'm trying desperately not to be too down on it, I think the problem with this aeroplane is it's version 1.0 of the aeroplane, so obviously the developer is going to carry on working on it, but there have been so many really good aeroplanes out for Flight Simulator recently that when you see one that isn't exceptional, you know, that's only kind of average, then it really stands out, and it's much more obvious than it otherwise would be. So if we go and jump inside, you'll see what's going on that has made me think this. So to begin with, okay, yes, it's got steam gauges and they all look really nicely modelled. So if you look around at them, they're nicely made. But what's going on with this kind of frosted look to them? And if we go to a sharp angle, you start to get some idea that it's a mistake with the shaders, maybe, and maybe they've modelled for the reflections like a white box or something. I'm not sure. I don't want to start speculating as to why this is the way it is, but it's from shallow angles you can see the instruments as they should be. It's very strange. Anyway, let's go and get this fired up. So if we go and look overhead, you can see I've already been fiddling with it. So we're going to put the shut-off valves to the tank to open the shut-off valves above. And then down in the cockpit, we're going to turn on this master alternator switch, which bizarrely is the master power switch, even though it says alternator. You can see this light has come on by default. We can turn that back off. It's nice to see things. You can see the slight change on the needle there when we flick the light on and off. We won't need the alternators until the engine's actually running. So let's go around the cockpit and we'll turn on the beacon light and the nav lights. So let's go and have a look outside quickly at those. So on the wing we've got the nav light lit up, and we've got the beacon is actually spinning. It's really nicely modelled actually. Okay. While we're doing other things, we'll let the GPS go capture the satellites. We can move the mixture controls to fully rich. The propeller was already at high RPM, so we can leave that alone. We are going to ease the throttles open a little bit, and then we're going to attempt to start the engine. Now this is a bit hit or miss as far as I've found so far. So we're going to turn on the magnetos for the right engine, turn on the fuel pump so the light comes on, and then we're going to hit the starter. And the engine made a sound but didn't start. Now here's where it gets really odd. If we switch this away from tank and back to tank and then try again. So the sound's still cut out, but the propeller's now actually running. So there's a few bugs in here somewhere. So we can turn the fuel pump off now. So it's really a boost pump. So let's try it with this one. So again, the sound cuts out from the starter, so it's not been mixed in properly, but the engine remains running. So I've seen this several times where you have to kind of cycle these switches, so there's definitely a bug in there somewhere. Okay, so we have the engine up and running. And we can now go and turn the alternators on. Okay. So now it's just complaining about the left fuel pump is still on, so we'll turn that back off. And essentially we're now good to go and have a fly, which we will do. So I'll just correct the barometric pressure. It was already correct. We'll correct the gyro compass. It was already correct, so I'm just being careful about this really. So let's go and try taxiing out to the runway. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's have a listen outside. I'm just going to check the volume levels. Yeah. So you're hearing the same as I'm hearing out here. So I'm going to open the engines up. So we're now at 50% on the engines. Parking brakes are on. If I go any further, the aeroplane starts creeping forwards on the parking brakes. And then it continues rolling. Which again seems a bit odd. Notice when I jump between the outside and the inside view, there's that strange banging noise. No idea what that is. There's like a multi-function DME come timer in here as well, which is quite interesting. Okay, let's go and have a flight. So I'm going to do something on purpose on the takeoff roll. So I'm just moving the flaps to takeoff position. You can see it's got a lot of positive thrust. I've got the engines on idle essentially, or throttles on idle. Okay, so I am going to push the throttles all the way forwards. Look at the acceleration. 40 knots, 60 knots, 80 knots. I'm going to rotate. Flaps up. 120 knots. I don't know how realistic it is that it can go this fast. I mean, okay, it's very streamlined and it has two engines, but really? Is that climb profile correct? So I'm leaving on full throttle and we'll level out and go down the valley and see how fast it goes in a straight line. So we're just up at 2,000, or coming towards 2,000 feet altitude. So let's go down to the far end of the valley. Notice that the nose is dipping around. It's very, very pitch sensitive. A small wiggle of the joystick, like just putting pressure on the joystick, is causing it to wave around. So it's flying very level without trimming, so I'm now having to put forward trim in as it accelerates. So it's coming up to 170 knots in a straight line. About 175 knots then, flat out, 170. Which seems a bit off to me, but maybe the real aircraft does do that. Okay. So we'll go and try the VOR radio out. So we're taking off from Boonville. Let's have a look. It's 112.30 for the nearby VOR. So we'll straighten up. We'll tune in 112.30. We'll switch that to active. We'll switch the navigation computer over to VLOC mode. So we've got so the radio navigation seems to work fine. But notice there's this big label, GPS for VFR navigation only. And I think most of that is there is no nav mode. There is roll mode, heading mode, altitude and pitch mode. And that's where things start to get really odd. So if we go and engage the autopilot, which we have to do with the button here. So we press it. First of all, there's no light to tell you the autopilot's on. Next thing you learn very quickly is the pitch button is backwards, or the pitch roller. So I'm moving it to down and it's lifting the nose. So figure that one out. So then we'll go for heading mode, and we'll spin the heading round towards the VOR. So it seems to track okay. It wavers around a lot, which is odd. It doesn't hold the vertical speed you've asked for at all. It seems to have massive problems doing so. Yeah, so this is just very, very odd. This is giving us obviously distance now to the brightness doesn't work, I don't think. No, it doesn't seem to do anything. It's just really odd that some things work, some things don't. Right, so we're going to stay on heading mode. We're just coming out past the VOR. If we look on the map, you can see that we're coming around past it now. So we're going to go back, turn the autopilot off, and again there's no indication anywhere. So I've just pressed this button on my controller, which has disengaged it. But there's no indicator anywhere that the autopilot's actually on. So let's just come back into the valley and do some approaches. On the way back we'll do some performance testing with the stalling. So the airfield's down here. Okay, so let's go nose up, keep an eye on the attitude indicator here. So we'll go for 20 degrees nose up, let the airspeed fall off and see what happens. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see what's happening outside. So engines at 75%, and now they're at 50%. So we'll keep it straight and level as hard as much as we can. So we're getting a stall warning. I'm feeding more and more backstick in to hold that 20 degrees nose up. And here it goes, it's falling. And it's just kind of mushing back down. Okay, that's fine. So pull it up again with 0 throttle this time. In a straight line, we'll go 30 degrees or 25 degrees nose up. And it falls in a straight line. What about going around a corner? Or an accelerated stall, as people might call it. That is really odd. You would expect it to drop a wing, wouldn't you? So okay, let's try the same trick then. We'll turn left and we'll use a lot of rudder during the turn to see that you would expect the inside wing to tuck under, and it's just not. It's almost like they've not implemented the air over the wing at all in the flight model. It's bizarre. Okay, let's go and scoot across the cockpit. There's the runway down there. Let's see how it behaves on an approach. It's not a tremendously expensive aircraft. It was under $20. But it's, I think, like I said at the start, the problem is there are so many really good aircraft now at very reasonable prices. The bar has been raised, and maybe this would have been quite acceptable in the early days of Flight Simulator, but I don't think it is anymore. So let's go and pull the propeller RPM back. Now this is supposed to be capable of really good short field performance, so I've gone for full flaps. Let's see how slow we can go. We're just holding it on the elevators. Floating. It's going far too fast, look. It's not getting down below 110 knots. So let's pull the speed of the propellers right back. So this is with full flaps. Let's have a look from outside. If we press space, we can still see over the nose for this. We've got a high alpha angle going on here, so it's quite difficult to see where we're going. We're still going incredibly fast. I'm running out of back stick though to pull us out. There's the stall. Notice there was no sound on the second bounce of the nose wheel. I mean, okay, we almost crashed into the runway there, but I think these things are worth doing to see how the plane behaves. It seems very quiet from outside, doesn't it? Anyway, I think, as I said, it's perfectly usable. I think the big problem is that the other aircraft available now are so good, it makes this stand out as being very, very average, which is a shame. And I'm sure the developers will continue developing it. Coming around to park around the back here. There's some hard standing here, so and now it's got stuck on the nose wheel. So for some reason I've seen other aircraft do that. Notice the nose wheel is not animating either. So it was turning and skidding the nose wheel across the dirt. Anyway, I'm going to put the parking brakes on there. And we'll pull the mixture, turn off the lights and the magnetos. It's difficult to see your way around this, isn't it? And turn off the magnetos. We're going to shut the tanks again. And there we go. So let's just have a little look around the aeroplane as well. So I'm imagining we can't expect doors or anything to work, can we? No. Which doesn't surprise me really, based on what we've seen elsewhere around the aeroplane. Bizarrely, there are some things that do work though. Like you are able to pull open and push close the storm windows. I'm guessing that's going to work both sides. Yeah, so they've gone to great lengths in some places to make things work nicely. Like the lights that are on by default, which is a bit odd again. But, you know, lots of light switches and things work. But I wish they had focused on the instruments, the flight model and the sound a little bit more. But maybe that will be upgraded and improved. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Not all development teams are huge. Not all development teams are well funded. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and we'll see what comes over the next few months. So okay, this was the Nemeth Designs Partenavia P68B Victor. It's not very expensive, so if you do like this sort of aeroplane, it's worth a go, and it's, like I say, it's quite good value. The problem is the bar has been raised in Flight Simulator by other aircraft. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Take care.